Welcome to Embracing Infinity, exploring the infinite oneness in the space of love and truth. Host Jennifer Rose is an international spiritual medium, healer, channeler, mentor, and transformational guide. Her focus is encouraging individuals to know themselves within the lens of their divine heart and highest potential, to evolve within the frequency of love and peaceful harmony. Now, here's your host, Jennifer Rose.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us here today, this morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are in the world. So happy to be here with all of you again, and looking forward to joining Nadija Bajrami, who will be here in just a few minutes, joining me as we have a lovely discussion today here. I'm so excited to have her on. She is a beautiful medium and has a lot of experience in as a grief educator and end-of-life doula and hypnotherapy. So she has so many beautiful insights to offer here us today too. So it looks like our friends are starting to join us. Hello, Melinda. Hello, Fran. Nice to see you, ladies. How's the cosmic angels today? So happy to see you. A few quick announcements. Next week, we will be having Paul Bannister, medium Paul Bannister, on our show. So we're looking forward to that. So you want to join us next Friday, same time. And please give a shout out to Miss Kelly. Hello, Station. Michelle, nice to see you. Miss Kelly, who is making all of this possible, and she's here in the background, making sure this all happens. And she's the beautiful creator and of the Sacred Spiral Network too, and she will be on her show at 1 p.m. Pacific time. So have a quick lunch and then hop on over to see Kelly. Come on back here and join us. So that will be really, really lovely. So I'm just going to chat for a couple of minutes as everybody starts coming in here today, and see what Spirit can bring us in for just a little bit of a message. But I don't want to talk for too long because I am so excited to have Nadija on, and I know there's a lot of beautiful things to be shared here today with all of us. So for today, I would kind of like to build on previous discussions that we've had. And I know one of the topics that we will be discussing here with Nadija is grief. And it shows up in so many different ways in our lives, but it is part of life. It is part of the love that we have for each other and for life and for existence. And one thing that's been coming up in my awareness a lot this week is just the idea of impermanence. And it's a really challenging thing to work through and to learn to accept in your life, because we live in this multi-dimensional reality. Even though it feels very physical, it feels very solid, it feels like time is moving at a semi-consistent speed for us too. But that which we built up can fall apart and be rebuilt and fall apart again. And Spirit shows me visions kind of things just kind of, you know, dissolving and reassembling, showing me the impermanence of things. And that's not to say that everything is, because we know change is constant, impermanence is constant, love is constant. That's always there. And you can't destroy things like love and beauty and grace and compassion, right? You can only build them and make them better. But impermanence is the constant change we go through. We're always transforming, we're always changing, and we build connections in life to ourself, to versions of ourself that we're used to being, to ideas, our belief systems, the things that we know to be true, but that also could change, and our connections with other people and our different relationships. And these processes and connections that we have keep evolving, they keep moving forward. But there's always grief in that which we once were, that which we once had, that which we once knew. And therein lies learning to sort of be with the flow and the embracing of the impermanence of life. Um, the beautiful gift of that is it can make you very clear and very, very grateful for everything that you have, to get you very clear in making the most of the time you have here. I saw recently a little post and it said something like love fiercely because this all ends. And of course we move over into spirit world. Hello, Iris. But this physical reality life as us, as you've heard me say before, this one life as you, how do you want to live it? Because it will change into another form at some point in our lives. And so, how can we make it the best that it can be? And that's why you always see spirit and myself kind of bringing us back to here, because it's so wonderful to explore, but we always want to kind of bring that home and take stock and keep looking inside, keep doing that inner work, that know thyself work. And we know thyself through the willingness to look at ourselves, at all the parts of ourselves, examine things, question things, see where we can do better, see where we could have thought about something different or engaged another perspective, and then through our relationships and connections with others. So it's always both, right? And so, what I'm going to invite you to do is ask yourself some really important questions and maybe consider journaling with these questions, but they're big ones. They're big ones. Hello, Carol. They're big questions. What do you want? Think about that question. And you may think that that's a really easy, and you may start listing off all of your things, but go deeper, go in the layers. Why do you want that? What's underneath that? What's prevented you from making that happen or getting that? What obstacles have been in the way? Or what belief systems or previous patterns of your life have contributed to maybe making it difficult? And there's no wrong to any of this. It's all part of the journey, of course. But think about it. What do you want? Why do you want it? Is this also what you need? And this could take, a long period of time to really dive into, but keep working on it. Ask yourself that question on a regular basis, and it will help you get very clear in life of how to make the most out of your experience. What are you afraid of? That's a hard one. These are questions that we may not want to go to or ask, but it's important because it will help you to get to know you better and it will help you to relate with other people better. They're important questions and they may take a while, as I've said before, to work through, but it will help you to kind of clarify things. And so, this is why I wanted to invite you to think about doing that to help you just kind of clarify things because we can get so busy in the day to day things that we may kind of forget to stop and like take stock of things and like really look at the big picture of us because I really do want all of us to experience a life with more joy and more love and more connection and friendship and all of the good things that the human reality as us gets to be, gets to experience, gets to have, to make all of your dreams come true. And if we're willing to do the work, if we're willing to look at us, you know, not just everything out there, but us in here, this multidimensional self, we're willing to do that. If we're willing to really think about things and learn to open up hearts, learn to find forgiveness for self and others, learn to see things from other people's perspective, not just our own. Take those extra little steps. Um, More miracles will happen for you, more gifts will happen for you. So there is a gift, huge gifts to taking the time um, and being brave and courageous because these are not easy questions to answer, right? They may seem like it on the surface, but really, really go deep with it. And the courageous spirit in you will move you forward into that broader space where more gifts can come and be received by you too. And I asked Spirit this morning. I asked, how do we get things to be more permanent or more long lasting? And it was all that. Be willing to be brave and courageous and look inside yourself and make meaningful connections with others and find the love and the heart connection with everybody. We can easily, self-sabotage sometimes things, if we don't know kind of like what's going on in our own consciousness. So it can be very, very useful to, moving forward. And a lot of people might say, I don't want to repeat the same patterns. This keeps happening over and over again. And that is all right. And there is spiritual meaning and purpose in that, because we follows through in cycles, and that is a meant to be kind of process of spirituality, is going through these cycles. And so what you learn in one cycle, you learn even more in the next one, and even more in the next one. But there is, a way to maybe evolve things better or a little faster or to a greater degree by willing to look inward and willing to also look outward and hold in that love, do it with compassion. So I'm going to leave you with that. And so just invite you to just kind of mull over these questions, write them down, work through them in the next few weeks or months as you choose, if it's meaningful for you. And with that, thank you for listening. And I'm so excited to bring in Nadija. She's joining us here from Ireland. So let's all welcome Nadija Bajrami, please.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Good evening.
Hello, beautiful angel. How are you today?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Good. You're looking lovely.
Thank you. You look that way this morning.
I know. We ladies do a little work to get this way too. So.
I
know. That's so funny. I'm so happy to have you.
We have a beautiful spirit. We have a beautiful spirit. That's the main thing,
Yeah, that's what shines through no matter what, too. And all of our friends are here welcoming us. Krish is welcoming you.
Everybody.
Gwendolyn and Fran is welcoming you. Stacia is welcoming you. So all of our lovely angels are all here today. Isn't that wonderful? Can you see in the comments? All you have to do is
beautiful
click on
community.
Comments.
Yes, hello everybody. Absolutely.
Beautiful.
So beautiful. I don't have all the names, but I see loads of people I know. So thank you very much for your support.
Yay! Yeah. And we're all here for you. So, and I want to thank you so much for giving us this time, because it's a true gift, because I've had you on my Sunday service before, and I know everyone has always just raved about you afterwards and gotten so much out of what you had to say for all of us. And would you like to just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll just move forward?
Yes, absolutely. So thanks again for having me, Jennifer, and thank you for everybody for welcoming me. So I'm Nadija. I won't pronounce my surname, but you did really well, Jennifer. Well done.
Thank you.
So I'm French by birth, living in Ireland, traveled the world. Initially had a strong corporate background until I got very ill a couple of years ago and I had some brain surgeries. And then I was sent to Ireland, don't ask me how, by the spirit world. I know that now. And I have since then built a practice as a multi-award-winning trauma-focused hypnotherapist, a mind coach, now a certified grief educator, and very recently an end-of-life doula. And I do mediumship as well. I mentor and I do readings and I do demonstrations, as well as Reiki healing as well. So that's a very brief summary. But I think the main thing here is that I'm very, very happy that I managed to find my calling. And I just wanted to bounce on what you just said before, Jennifer. I heard you talk about ask yourselves, and this is a message for everybody as I'm introducing myself, what you really want. Because we think we want loads of things based on other people's expectations, based on whatever we should want. That's an awful thing, what we should want. Like, people have a way of making us feel, and even society, that we should want certain things. But then your heart and your spirit, really, usually, they're the one that really know what you want. And this is what Jennifer said before, is to go deep within ourselves, the core, our center, and to really ask ourselves what we really want, not what we should want or what we think we should want. So then I'm very grateful
Yes,
to have
thank
found my
you.
calling. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Nadia, for saying that too. And yeah, we're so grateful to have you here. And you're so right, because sometimes what we need can be different from what we think we want or what we maybe actually do want. And then we have to learn to kind of balance the two. And then there can be, internal fears that we may not even be aware of that can prevent us from getting what we want or even get in the way of getting what we want. And we don't want that to happen. We want everybody to have more miracles come in their life. Debbie just joined us. Hey, lady, how you doing?
Oh, I love my beautiful Debbie.
So and let's move with that. If so I know grief is a big thing that you're an expert in as an educator, and I know that you've worked with the best in that field, and it is something that connects us all. And because we love, right? And love and grief are connected. And, it feels like the more we love, the more our capacity to love continues to grow and expand. And so does sometimes the loss and the grief that we have to come with. And so I know many of us in the spiritual community, including us, mediums and spiritual practitioners, spirit will put us through a great deal of transformation and kind of rearrange things in our lives and so forth. And then there's a lot of dark night of the soul that everybody's going through too. So a lot of grief over former self, grief over former belief systems. And then, your social circle can change, your lifestyle can change, all of those things. So we've got grief over the loss of a loved one, which we as mediums hold space for a lot. But it's also something that we are going to experience ourselves in a lot of different ways so that we can hold space. And so we all know what it is because we have it within us too. We hold it, right? We hold that, but we continue to love and hold space for others.
Absolutely. And it's very on point about the fact that grief is it's a very generic word. It means everything
Yes.
and nothing really, because when we talk about grief, people think straight away of, about the loss of a loved one, like a person or a pet.
Mm-hmm.
But we forget that grief is, first of all, multifaceted, but it's far more than just the loss of a loved one. It's the loss of a previous life, like in my case, I was like a sales director for years. And when I found my calling, I had to grieve also the person I used to be. I had to take some time because I still had some, I would say, habits from this past life. So we grieve the person we used to be. We grieve also. It could be, I used to work in therapy with somebody was actually playing football, a very, very, nice player in football. And he had a very bad injury a couple of years ago. And he grieved his body, he grieved his career, because then he couldn't play anymore. So when I say it's multifaceted, it means a lot of things to different people. But I think one thing that will always come when we talk about grief is that grief and love are just really inseparable. They go together. The more we love, I have to say good news or bad news, but the more we will grieve, because at some stage in our life, one thing that connects all human beings here and all beings in general, living beings, is that we will experience loss at some point in our life,
Right. And it does make us hopefully appreciate what we do have and make the most of it too, and become hopefully very present if we can hold on to that, because sometimes we get that and then we lose it. We get that, that clarity and presence, and then we kind of lose it again too. The one word that's popped up for me is sorrow. And I was thinking the same thing, because grief sometimes has this sort of, like you said, kind of generic word, and it has emotion to it, but it's like sorrow is like the expression of grief. So that's shown up for me. And then I've, it came into my awareness, and then in my discussions with other people, that word has come up too. And that seems to be, maybe the quality or it has a little bit more depth to it that we can connect to.
Absolutely. And it's very interesting. I mean, I love talking about grief, and I'm just trying to think to be concise, because I could talk all night, all day, and I don't want to take everybody's time. But it's what really drew me to be a grief educator And then obviously an end of life doula. We'll get into that, into my story a little bit later on probably, but it is all the grief, the different losses, the multiple losses I've experienced in a short period of time. And then as I was growing up, I realized that, well, everybody mentions the word grief in every languages. I speak a lot of languages, and everybody can say, well, this person is grieving or they've experienced grief. But one thing I've noticed is in any country I've lived or I've traveled, nobody is really equipped to handle grief. And this is really what actually pushed me also to work in this field, is that every time you hear that somebody has lost, a person or even a job or a divorce as well, the end of a relationship. Well, the first instinct, the human instinct, is to come and put a little plaster on the person and say, you're going to be okay. Give it a bit of time. Now, like when a child runs and hurts themselves and you put a little plaster to stop the bleeding. This is what we try to do in grief, because we're not equipped and we don't want, especially nowadays with this fast-paced environment, we don't want to actually see pain. We want everything to be, beautiful and rosy and lovely, and we're not equipped. So we don't know what to say. I'm sorry. Something we hear a lot when you hear that your friend or somebody has lost a relative, for example. The first thing we say is, I'm sorry. And one day, I think this happened to me in the workshop in Scotland with Alice, actually, that we all know, but also with another person. Hi, Alice. With another person as well that I have met a couple of months ago, is that when you say, I'm sorry, some people look at you and they say, what are you sorry for? You have nothing to do with my loss. Why are you sorry? So that's, some people can find this very clumsy as well, just to say, I'm sorry. And again, grief is that multifaceted, complex feeling that we tend to avoid. Even like talking about death and grief as mediums here, we are used to talk about it because it's part of what we do to hold space for people. But for most of people, is the first instinct is avoid at all costs. Even funerals. I mean, now in Ireland, there's still quite a lot of traditions with funerals, but most of the time, a funeral is now very quick. Funeral is gone. People expect you just to move on. That's it. Mm-hmm. Right? It's gone. Hide it. So really, really what struck me as I was growing up and having to deal with my own grief is that, well, they are not that, they didn't used to be anyway, that many resources for people who are grieving, and professional resources, I mean. And then the people we love, as much as they love us, well, they can be very clumsy when it comes to our grief. And really, one thing as well I want to mention is the first thing when somebody is grieving, or whatever it is they're grieving, a pet, a human, a job, a relationship, a body part, I'm also thinking about people who have like a mastectomy, with breast cancer, etc., is to be present and just to be able to be a safe container and hold space for their pain and their suffering. And this is something we're not, honestly, with now all the experience I have, I can honestly say we're not equipped to do. We're not doing it very well.
Yeah.
So being able to talk and being, on your show, and other people also asking me to talk about grief, for me is a privilege, just to raise awareness that there are people that can hold space and that grief is not a disease. I think there is something that we need to remember. It is not a disease. It is a strong emotion that we feel, that we need to actually feel to heal, because we can't heal what we don't feel. So trying to put a plaster or a bandage on something that we need to feel to heal is very, not only clumsy, but can be very dangerous as well, long term.
Yeah. Can you share with us how we can hold space for someone's pain?
So, the first two needs, the 6 needs of the grieving, but the first 2 needs of the griever, that are really the main ones, are to acknowledge someone's pain and to let them express their feelings. These are really the 2 main, I would say, needs of a griever. So to be able to acknowledge someone's pain and then to be able to let them express their feelings. Now, it sounds easy, on paper, or even saying it like that. It sounds very easy. But actually, it is not, because when somebody, we'll take the case of somebody having lost a loved one, they lost a loved one. And my clients, anyway, the first time they come, the first things that always come is that they didn't have their pain witnessed, and they didn't really have an opportunity to express their feelings. They did at the beginning until the funeral, when the loss happened, even during the funeral, maybe a week or two after the funeral. And after that, what they felt is that when they were talking about the person they lost or how they felt, people would try to tell them, oh, it's time to move on now, time will heal. All those generic, what we call banalities that we use to fill the void, to fill some blanks, because we don't know what to say. So my advice is here really being able to just acknowledge their pain with very basic words like, I don't know what you're going through, but I can understand or I can relate, because every loss is different. Even if two mothers have lost their daughters, their sons, their kids, their grief will be different, even though it's the same type of loss. So just by acknowledging, I'm here for you, I understand what you're going through,
Right.
or I can,
Yeah.
I can anyway I can hold space for you. You can also say that. And sometimes, honestly, when you have nothing to say, when you don't know what to say, just making the person aware that they can talk to you.
I'm here.
I'm here. And I think we really underestimate the power of presence. And you mentioned that before when you were talking about living in the present moment. But when we have people who are grieving, the most precious gift we can give them is our presence. Being present, because then they feel safe to open up, they feel heard, they feel witnessed. And this is really very important when you're grieving. I mean, from experience now, I can say that these two needs are rarely met in people who are going through grief. So just presence, offering assistance as well, like if people have children, maybe go and pick them up at school, little things like that. Or if, the griever is stuck in the house and doesn't want to even shower or get up, because it is very hard when you're grieving, maybe bring them a coffee, or after a couple of weeks, ask them if they want to come with you to the coffee shop. Little baby steps, just being there. And do you need help with whatever, the gardening, the ironing? I don't know. I'm not a good gardener, so I won't do that. But any tips, any help that you can offer. So it could be very basic, but what the person needs, the basic needs is presence, you being open, and no banalities like God take them, it was their time, they lived a good life, etc. These are banalities. Or they did this to themselves. I heard that during a funeral when somebody, died by suicide. And that was awful for the family to hear. He put it on himself. I mean, you don't say things like this. We should really avoid any banalities. So hopefully that kind of makes sense as an introduction to be present. Offer help. If you don't know what to say, stay silent. Just make sure the person knows you're here. And respect the fact that sometimes people don't want to speak. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And when they don't force them. Because I've heard that in when I was working with a couple who lost a child, the wife was was telling me, my husband doesn't want to speak about, the daughter's passing. He doesn't want to open up. One thing we don't do is to force somebody, telling them it's for their good. No, they know, they grieve on their own terms, and they will know when they need to talk about the grief. Right. So don't push, be present, offer material help. That can really help, when you're going through grief. Somebody who can, as I said, pick up your kids at school, or do a bit of cooking, or even bring some soup or some food, etc. People will remember that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I think we've all probably made some of these little mistakes on the way because we didn't know better of what to say. But I so appreciate that. And we could even just say, what do you need? Do you need advice now? Do you need me to just listen? I can just be here. It's such a gift. That gift of humanity, that is spirit.
Absolutely.
That is love. If we want to know what love is, that's a good way. To
giving
do that.
Your presence, giving your presence is the most precious gift. because it's
Yeah.
you as a human.
Yeah.
And just on the point of, as I call them, the banalities or generalities in the grief world, I had a lady who came to me for her daughter, was about 6 or 7, telling me that the daughter started to have behavioral issues, because I also work in therapy with children. So long story short, the lady came with the daughter, and we started to chat, a bit of drawing, etc. And I asked the mother aside, when did that start? And she said, well, when her mother passed, so the grandmother, when the grandmother passed, the little girl started to have behavioral issues, according to the mother. And that started with something that could sound simple to us, but the little girl heard during the funeral that people, paying their respects to the family, said, well, she was so good, that God took her before time, and it's so sad. So then the little girl understood from that I will not be good, because then God will take me away from my mother.
Oh.
And she told me that. She said, well, she gave me a lady's name, and she said, this person said that my nanny was so good that God took her. So I don't want to be good, because then they will take me away from my mommy.
Yeah, so we don't think about the implications of what we're saying, and so it's so important to be thoughtful. Thank you for educating this. And
Absolutely.
I know myself, when I've been through grief, I've had people say some things to me that I just did not help. just did not help. They just thought I should be able, because of what I do for a living, thought I should be able to recover faster, and it just takes as long as it takes, and everybody is different. And so I do want to say hi to everybody who's also joined us. Ava here, thank you. Melody's joined us. Iris, Carol's here. Christopher, James, and Mike, hello. Thank you all for joining our conversation. We really appreciate having you all here. Carol is saying she had lung cancer twice, 5 years apart, and she lost 3/4 of her right lung. I was okay with it if my husband couldn't talk to me about it. It hit him different than me. I just knew I'd be fine. So now I'm looking at it as he was grieving too. Yeah, that's really important, because I have seen in families with loss too, sometimes like a husband and wife may process things very differently, say if they've lost a child too.
Yeah.
So that's true. We process things differently. And so we want somebody to hold space for our grief, but we may not realize that they're grieving too. They're grieving with us, because this has happened
Yeah.
to both of us, right? Right. Her loss is also his loss too. Thank you for sharing that with us, Carol. We
Thank
really
you, Carol.
appreciate it. Yeah.
And thank you, everybody. I
Yeah.
see loads of lovely messages. Thank you, because it's really
Yes.
heartwarming to have to feel so welcome, and that everybody is so receptive about what to me is the most important topic.
Yeah, for sure. It is so important. And
And
sometimes maybe even just letting people know, like, because um I have people say things to me sometimes, like, don't take that personally, or and sometimes like that might be a good thing, or come on, get going, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And sometimes I just need to say, you know what, I'm going through some grief right now. and and they're like, and then it kind of clicks that maybe like taking a step back and being a little bit more compassionate would be good too, because everybody has things that they go through in life, including all of us too. And so I just wanted to thank you for kind of reminding us sort of what we can say and what would be less productive to say. Krish is saying yes, love, empathy, support. Gwendolyn, just a reminder to show love. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Gwendolyn also says, Nadia, those words are so correct. Showing love. My grandma always said a funeral would not be for her, but the ones they leave behind. Yeah.
absolutely, and that's so true. And thank you, Gwendolyn, here as well, because when people go, and I see that on the end of life now as well. Obviously, it is at some stage. Overall, they do make peace, not all the time, and mostly with the fact that they're going. But it's the people left behind who will be troubled, who will be suffering. And
Yeah.
just to come back to what we said before, mentioned that, Jennifer, is there's no timeline in grief. Let's really be clear. And this is really something
Yeah.
sometimes I get very blunt about, when people talk about, we know about the stages of grief. Loads of people know about them. There's different stages, and we go, through those different stages on our own terms. There is no timelines. We can be in denial. I was in denial when my father died for decades. And then I was, probably 10 years, and I was in anger for about 20 years. So I didn't really follow the stages in any specific time frame. So this is very important. Like timeline in grief just doesn't exist. And
Mhm.
your grief is as unique as your love. I think this is something that we forget. Your grief is as unique as your love. And one thing as well that I'm going to push it here, but I think David Kessler, with whom I trained
Please
under
do.
my
Yes.
certification, was one day he said something he keeps saying it actually, but the first day I heard it, it was like, oh my God, it's very simple, but very true. It's like when clients would ask him, well, David, how long will I grieve now? Like, how long is this going to last? How long am I going to feel, sad and empty? And, how long will I find it difficult to move on and go, or even move on overall in life? Well, his answer was this, his it was, well, how long will your loved one be gone? So basically, we're not there to get over grief. This is an awful expression. We're not
Right.
getting over grief, because that would mean that you're forgetting the person you love that you lost. So the way I explain it, especially with children, but with adults as well, it's your grief is like your little treasure box that you will,
Yeah.
probably have with you in your heart forever because you've loved. So it will stay here. So nobody wants to tell you get rid of your grief. I mean, nobody should. We don't want you to get rid of your grief or overcome your grief or get rid of anything, because again, it is something that links you to your loved one, to that person you love. So you just learn to actually live alongside it. So it's that little treasure box that you keep, and you're living not only to live with it, but alongside it. So there will be moments where, the treasure box is very nicely, tightly closed
Mhm.
and won't trouble you on your journey as you carry it. But there will be other moments where the treasure box starts to overflow and to open and needs your attention. And these are the moments where grief strikes out of the blue as well. And that's
Yeah.
okay. That's okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. And I know that's been very helpful because I have heard you use that expression with the treasure box, and I think
Mhm.
that maybe that's one thing that can help us develop more presence is to realize that everybody we have come in contact with, that we're connected to, has a treasure box. We all have one. We all have one of those. And maybe that will allow us to have more presence and a little bit more grace and compassion with each other. And doesn't that help build the world a better place? In just doing that too. That was so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Nadia. Um, I wanted to swing back to Carol because she said, thank you. At the time, I thought he was just cold. He just couldn't
Mhm.
handle the situation. So, because she at the time didn't realize that he was also grieving too. It reminds me of a movie that I love by Robin Williams called Where Dreams May Come. And it was a soulmate, soulmate couple that came together. So they had, that everlasting eternal bond, and but they lost their children, which um, uh, gave them, the couple a lot of grief. And the Robin Williams thought he had to, be strong and handle it, whereas she needed to go into a home for a while because she attempted suicide after losing her two children, right? And they ended up staying together and moving forward, but then he died too. And so then from heaven he finds out his wife has committed suicide. And just so you know, what I'm about to describe isn't, was just an illusion, but they said, she's gone to a different place. And he's like, what? How could you do that to her? Right? And it was just an illusion, because the soul lesson for Robin Williams, for his character, was to join her in her grief. And so
Mhm.
he went through this other sort of experience in spirit world that was kind of given to him as a gift to go and find her and stay with her and meet her and be willing to join her in the place that she was, and which wasn't a real place, right? The bad place isn't a real place. And they and then they came back into the, into where the actuality of where they were, which is in the love and the bliss of heaven, right? And that was like from a soul perspective. So that's a big thing. How can we join people, for especially when it's like a family situation and
Mhm.
people who are very close, who have combined loss? Is there something we can do there with people that are connected to us? Like if a husband and wife have lost a child, or if there's just been a big impact, say, some kind of natural disaster and the whole family now has to move or something like that. How do we connect in each other?
And that's actually something that I'm experiencing now with a client. She's an auntie, so the niece passed away, and very recently, actually, very very recently, and I just hopefully that makes sense. But so her sibling, who's the parent of the child, obviously is going through horrific grief, losing one child. They have two children, so one now passed away, and when this happened, the whole family obviously was, with the parent lost the child and the grandparents were grieving, and everybody was grieving in their own way. But my client, so the auntie in this case, was left aside. And when she was trying to talk about her grief, she was told, well, it's not your moment, it's not your time. We need to look after the parents here, and the grandparents. So why am I talking about this? Because as a family, they're all experiencing grief, but we tend to have a hierarchy in grief, like, okay,
Hmm.
parents, grandparents, but then the auntie, who was actually very close to the child, to the niece, was deeply, deeply grieving, hence her reaching out to me for the grief support. And here again, because she wasn't at all witnessed, her grief was not witnessed, it was totally dismissed. So as a family, my advice, again, it will be different. And I don't like to use the word advice, but would be to remember that when there's like collective losses, or everybody is grieving on their own terms and everybody deserves space. And again, there is no hierarchy in grief. We understand that, the parents losing their child, this is horrific. But the auntie also is grieving here because she has no kids. That was like a child, you see. And I want to go even a bit further. When my one of my losses was my who I call my soulmate in my late 20s, and he passed away from cancer. We're not married. So here again, society was, well, it was only your boyfriend. That's what I heard. So
Oh.
it's not your husband. So really, again, here, we don't acknowledge your grief. So I talk about two subjects at the same time, but
Hmm.
collective grief. So his daughter was grieving, his family was grieving, I was grieving. But this collective grief, losses, multiple losses that can affect different people. Well, I was not acknowledged in that case. Later on, yes, but when I needed to be acknowledged, I wasn't. Like this lady, the auntie wasn't. So I don't know if that kind of makes a bit of sense, but it's about
Yeah.
really remembering that there's no hierarchy and everybody grieves, the person a different way. We have the case scenario as well when somebody who had no parents growing up, who had like estranged parents. I know somebody like that, not my client, but I know the person. Their neighbor was like the mother. So the neighbor looked after them. They lived in the same estate. When the neighbor passed away, the person was devastated. Here again, people were wondering, well, what's wrong with you? It's just your neighbor. It's not your mother. It's not your, family member. Well, that person was the only person that was able to give this person love. So when this person is gone, obviously the person is deeply in grief. So in a family, it is tricky because we tend to have this hierarchy and to prioritize grief. The parent must have all the attention, and then all the other people, even like siblings, by the way. This is also very difficult because there's no rules, and I wouldn't like to be in the shoes of parents losing their kids, but when a parent loses their child, I teach them to remember that there is another child waiting for them as well. And that child not only needs their attention, but also is also grieving the sibling. So
Yeah.
it is quite, it's a bit like it's a web, it's quite complicated, but
Yeah, it
at the
is.
same time, it's quite simple in a way that give people space to grieve. Allow them to grieve and listen to them when they grieve. Don't dismiss them.
Right.
This is the key in like this collective or family losses. Not because
Right.
she's not the mother or she's not the father, not to be able, no, don't let
Right.
them grieve. I've seen stepfathers grieving as much as what we call a blood father, you know?
Right. And I wonder if it's even harder on men because they're expected to be strong for the women because we're allowed to be more emotional in society, and I'm wondering if it's hard for the men, you know?
Yes, yes, and here again, and it's interesting. As I was saying this on one of my posts in my therapy now, and even in my grief work, believe it or not, I have more and more men than women, and probably about 65% male clientele of like patients against 35% women. And I'm happy to see that men are now opening up in their own way because, as you just mentioned, Jennifer, men and women, we don't operate the same way, but also
Yeah.
society doesn't have the same weight on each one of us. And it's quite an interesting subject because men are supposed to be the strong, you know, people providing and don't cry. When some boys are being raised, they keep hearing, well, men don't cry, be strong, you're a man, don't cry. And women are, let's say, allowed to show more emotions to some extent.
Hmm.
But for men, it's very difficult because society, and this goes to an overall mental health issues for men, society just expects them to have it all together, to be composed, and to just go to the pub and have a drink. And that's all. They're not. I'm sorry, I'm mentioning the pub because I live in Ireland, but to bars.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, you're right, and that I just feel like that is an important kind of like little
Yeah.
segue too, is because it is considered very, kind of masculine to be strong and
Mhm.
cerebral and logical and reasonable, and we're not robots. We're not machines. We all feel, and even I'm in America here, and it's still that very kind of like that same kind of energy of, you have to be that strong person all the time, or you have to be so motivated, so driven. And those are all the things that I am. I'm very motivated. I'm very driven, but I also feel too, right? And I don't want to be expected to be a robot, and nobody else here does either too. And so that's where I think a little bit of tenderness can come in, and that, like, men need it too, and we all need someone to just hug us or listen or just
Absolutely.
say I'm here, or just say I'm here, or
And an
just
advice to women out there, and do not shoot the
thank you.
messenger. Women here, I said, do not, ladies, do not shoot the messenger. And I said, Nadia,
No, give
why is
it
she
to
saying
us.
this? Why is she saying this? No, but it's like, as women, again, I don't like to talk as a generality, but overall, we tend to open up a little bit more between ourselves, amongst ourselves about our
Yeah.
emotions. And men wouldn't really do that. And I took the example of the pub because men would tend to go to the pub here and drink their grief or just
Hmm.
not talk about it. But a piece of advice for women, in a relationship, if they've experienced, a common grief, or do not push. And that's really something I keep repeating to my clients as well. Please do not push your partner, your husband. And God forbid you've experienced the loss of a child, hopefully not, but it could be even the loss of a pet, anything that you have in common, even their mother. Let's say that the husband lost their mother or their sister. Do not push them to talk about their grief, and do not make them feel that they have a problem if they don't talk about their grief. Really, I'm going to come back to the first point, where show them that you're here for them, that you can hold space, and tell them that there are resources available for them to handle their grief. But once you've done that, you can keep monitoring the situation, but just do not push. And why? Because you're going to make them feel that they have a problem. Not only are they grieving and they're going through deep grief, but then they
Hmm.
end up thinking they have a problem on
Right.
top of that it is not normal the way they grieve. And that is, I mean, this applies for women as well, because some men could be more open, and some women maybe a bit less open about their grief. But overall, I know that loads of men, some of my clients, feel the pressure because they're being pushed. I heard
Hmm.
the couple I talked about, the wife was telling me, how dare he go back to work so quickly? Does just our child's life mean so little to him? These kind of words. She was very much obviously in grief and hurting and missing the little girl, but so was he. And we just have to remember that again, men and women function differently. So do not push,
Right.
do not make them
Yeah.
feel that they have an issue or they have a
Right.
problem.
And men are sensitive too. They just express
Correct.
it differently, right? They're very sensitive too. And I've been on the receiving end of being kind of pushed to talk before. And so I know that it just doesn't feel good. You can only do it when you're ready and when you feel
Mhm.
safe to do so too. So creating a safe environment too,
Yes,
and working towards I'm really big on relaxing the nervous system, whatever we can do. And I
absolutely.
know that I saw your post on your physical fitness earlier today, and that maybe that would be something you could touch on for a few minutes of how we can
I will.
self-care our bodies to keep our nervous systems better, because we're all very sensitive here. We have very sensitive nervous systems, because especially
Mhm.
being intuitive, right? And the more we can calm those down, the more we can, lead with our heart and our higher awareness, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yes. So now I'm going to talk about maybe even grief and trauma. I was listening to, I got to know Frank Anderson, the international grief specialist who's American, through my learning with David Kessler. I was very fortunate to listen to him live and be able to speak to him, in the groups. And he was on the podcast today and just listened to his podcast as a replay. And he was talking about, we know that how trauma is stored in the body and how the body keeps the scar. So now I'm talking about that because very often, not all the time, but very often trauma and grief are again very much intertwined. Now, not every grief has trauma, but every trauma has grief. So this is again something that we can talk on to in another time. But the body will hold the memory of whatever happened to us, and in this case, the grief. And when we experience grief, our body tends to shut down. Like it's you can't get up, you can't really sleep, or maybe you sleep too much. The energy level is very low. And then as you are walking on your healing journey, on your grief healing journey, let's call it this way, your body starts again to pick up slowly and gently. But what again here, everybody will be different to in a way that they will handle that. But I know for me, what worked really well was physical exercise, was healthy eating. I had bad food and unhealthy food for decades, and the lack of exercise for decades because I was really keeping my grief inside and I didn't want to even acknowledge it. It's a blocked grief, it's another problem. But when you really are on that grieving journey, anything that helps soothe your body, let it be nature, walking in nature, meditation, grounding is very like earthing. Grounding is very
Mhm.
important when you're grieving, especially actually when I do grief work, I offer some light massage. I'm not a massage therapist, a very light touch therapy around the feet. Nothing to do with reflexology or anything like this. I said I'm not a trained massage therapist, but just light feet massage to help the griever ground himself. Because when we grieve, we are very much ungrounded. So anything that can help you ground yourself, earthing technique, hugging trees, walking bare feet, walking in water, cold water, anything like this really helps you to, help bring you back on this physical
Yeah.
earth.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, because
And
we can get
physical
really out of body when
yes.
things are happening in our life that are hard to deal with. We can get really out of our body, and I find that when that happens to me, that's when I get really emotional because I'm not fully like present in my body too. And then it's that grounding, once you're back into a safe space. So we really have to calm our nervous systems down because that cortisol starts flowing through you,
Absolutely. Yes.
and it wreaks havoc on your body. So even breathing can really help to move energy because not everybody is mobile enough to be
Mhm.
able to exercise, but whatever we can do to move or to breathe, to meditate, to calm the nervous system down, bring us back into the parasympathetic nervous system.
Yes.
And we've got to take care of ourselves, just like you were saying, like you got to take care of this body. And I think some of us get very disassociated from our body because we like to connect with spirit. We
Mhm.
think, oh, I'm trapped in this body. I want to be a spirit again. But it's like we need to take care of this to make the most of our lives, to experience our spirit, right? The freedom that we all want to feel is the joy of life, that the joy of being alive, right? And so by taking care of our physical self, we'll have more of that energy to do that and get, like you said, that grounded presence and being with the feet. And God bless the gentlemen who, the men in our lives and the guys that are here on the show that I know are really, really good people, because they always they always help us ladies feel grounded. And most of us have memories back in the day when we did a lot of like in-person circles. We'd all want to like go sit next to the one guy who was in the development circle. So we would so God bless the men for that. Debbie's like, yes, I love being in the air with the angels. So do I too. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? In fact, I just shared a memory with that. We love being with the angels, but we're always tethered here in love as well too. So we've got it. We've got it. Shout out to Christopher and my.
But I think it's amazing what you just said, because,
Yeah.
as spiritual workers, and I love what David just said as well. And I agree. I love being, with my
Me too.
and
I
floating
know.
out of my body. But the thing is that our body in this anyway, physical realm, in this body that we have in this life, whatever people believe in, we need to actually care for it, because this is the vehicle that's going to carry our spirit.
Right.
And I mentioned physical exercise, but it can be, you mentioned very rightly so, the breathing, because breathing is the base, I would say, the basics of the basic that everybody forgets. We talk about breathing, but very quickly. And even in meditation, or even in like sitting in the power circle, etc., that we have in person, when the teacher will ask us to breathe in deeply and out, I could feel people struggle. And I think we need to go back to some very basics, which is our breath, breathing, as you mentioned, to reactivate the parasympathetic system, because otherwise
Yeah.
our fight, flight, freeze, our defense cortisol level will go up, because, we will feel danger. And the grieving person, and not all the time, but very often, feels danger everywhere, because
Right.
the immune system is weaker as well. And the sympathetic system is full on.
Right.
We really need to calm that down, and I think, as I said, earthing, grounding, meditation, physical exercise if you can, but nature, and these things cost nothing. Being in nature, we've all experienced this. When we go for a walk, I see loads of people now going for a walk. No judgment here, but going for a walk and in nature, or like, in the woods or whatever, with their earpods on or like earphones on. What I do now is like, I listen to them before I'm on the metro or the tram or something like this, because I don't want to hear everybody's, lives, and I don't want to try and help anybody when I'm focusing on something else. But when I walk in nature and I'm trying to get my mind off something, or just relax or earth or ground myself, like, no, nothing in my ears, because I want to hear the birds, I want to hear the trees, the leaves I'm walking on. And this is something I would really like, another piece of advice. Take the earphones, the earplugs, or whatever it is that you have, and listen. Use all the senses. As mediums, we know how important it is to use all our senses when we work with the spirit world. But what about when we're on our earthly human life,
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, I'm guilty of that, of listening to my music or talking on the phone while I'm on my walks. But I do still try to stay connected, but you're absolutely right to just listen to the birds and the different sounds. And those are important things for us to tune in, and they help your mediumship too, because if we're practicing using our senses in our daily life, we'll be better mediums too. But I love, and spending time with pets is very grounding and healing too, and pets grieve too, so we want to hold space for our pets that also grieve. If someone, family members changed, or we've moved, or another pet has died, those kinds of things too, we want to make sure we hold space for them, but they can also be very healing for us too. But going on a walk with your dog, if you have one, or I love to stop and take pictures of nature, trees and flowers in neighbors' yards and things like that, and then put them out there to make other people happy too. And that's healing for me, to notice the beauty, because it's really easy to turn on the TV and notice all of the bad stuff in the world. It's not that easy to take time and notice the beauty. Yeah. The birds are the best, right, Gwendolyn? We all love the birds, just hearing them, and so we could do things that help bring more birds, plant trees, put hummingbird feeders out, anything that brings that You know, some people, that's what they live for at the end. As long as the birds are singing, they have something to wake up to in the morning if they're at the end of life, you know, or, you know, battling terminal illness. Those birds can be like the thing that keeps us connected to this world too. So yeah, everybody is resonating with all of that too. We have just a few more minutes, so I would love to segue too into that. Your work as an end of life doula as well, of how we can hold space for people, that because that's a very special thing to help people make a beautiful, you know, transition
Condition,
into
yes.
spirit. Yeah.
Well, again, actually, I heard this, that the spirit told me in like a year and a half ago now. They told me, well, you need to work with the dying. And I said, I'm going to make everybody laugh here. I said, come on, spirit. I'm single. I'm already talking to the dead. And now you want me to talk to the dying. How am I going to meet my soulmate if I tell them I speak to the dying and to the dead? So I just wanted to make everybody laugh here for just a minute, you know, bring a bit of humor in this discussion bit. And
Yeah.
anyway, I heard spirit and found the school and everything in France. It's a French school. But that to me came as actually something very complementary to what I do, not only in mediumship, but as a grief educator, because we won't have time to cover this today, but we're clumsy enough as a society to look after people who experience loss. But I think we're even more clumsy looking after people who are transitioning, because overall and worldwide, palliative care units, you know, hospices, end of life units are actually under pressure because, you know, the healthcare staff, the medical staff, they're quite limited. We know that worldwide. I think it is an issue worldwide. And the thing is, we forget that people nearing the end of life are still alive. They're still there. For how long, we don't know, but they're still alive. And why I wanted to really become an end-of-life doula is because I want to be that missing link between the healthcare professionals, because end-of-life doula brings a holistic approach, emotional, spiritual support, and material support as well, could be helping people with their wills, etc., organizing the right people. But really, I wanted to help people to live fully until it's time to go, and not to be left in the corner, in the bedroom, in a room to die. Because these moments, the last moments, are precious. When you work with somebody at the end of life and you see the smile because they're hearing the music they love again, because they can talk to you about the first love, because they have somebody who is interested in them, who is interested in the life they lived. They're not just a dying person, they're a person. And I think this is really my my motto here is like helping people with compassion and treating them like the living being they still are. And that is something I was very angry about years ago, and I use the word angry when I was seeing people in palliative care units and just left to die. And there's no, of course, the palliative care units are doing an amazing job. But what I mean by left to die is lack of resources. So you provide the medical care. Mm-hmm. And sometimes nowadays, we know families live everywhere, you know, in the world, people are scattered. And some people have nobody. They have literally nobody. So not only it is the last moments of their lives, but nobody even acknowledged that they're still there, you know? So that's what I want.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I know Melinda does some work with end of life doula as well, and Gwendolyn's wanting to get into that. So those are beautiful gifts. We need more of that in this world too.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
And,
yes.
And as a medium, so many messages have come through, you know, or like that holding of the hands before they pass, or somebody who was feeding them, you know, or, you know, making their, you know, stroking their head before they passed, making sure their hair was done or put a little makeup on, took the time to keep them comfortable. Those are memories that the soul, the spirit of them takes and is so grateful for, right? That love, because they leave this world knowing that they were loved and cared for, right? Everybody deserves that. Everybody deserves to know that they matter and that they're loved. So thank you for being such an angel on earth. Oh my God.
Oh God, no. I don't know. Ask the men in my life. Not sure if you will agree with the description.
No, thank you for being an angel to your community, for all that you do to help others, and for spreading your wisdom and sharing your wisdom here. It's so appreciated. And so I know that we're just all so grateful. It's just been a lovely, beautiful container. Any last minute, little words you want to leave us with? And I know Kelly's put everyone's information here in the chat box if you want to get a hold of Nadija
Yeah.
to learn more. But what
And
else would you like to leave us with?
to answer Melinda, she said, "Do I teach classes?" No, I hold workshops, but I don't teach officially. It is something I will definitely do in the future. Yes, the teaching
Yeah,
is something I love. So yeah, and if I may just say one little more things. I know I talk a lot. You're gonna
please.
have to tell me to go away, but I just wanted to mention the fact that as mediums, I think sometimes it's even harder on us, because people who are in our community, a spiritual community, when they know we're a medium, some people will tend to think it's easier for us if we lose a pet or a parent or a sibling because we're
Yeah,
mediums
it's
and
not.
because we know we can talk to them, and it's not. The
It's
grief
not.
is it's there. We're
Very
just a
real.
physical being, it's real. And even though we know there's a spirit, after the physical death, it doesn't take away the fact that, yes, well, when I get married, my
Mhm.
father, well, married again, sorry, my father will not be here for me physically. I mean, so just wanted to mention
Yeah.
that it's not easier because we're mediums.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's what I was trying to touch on earlier too, is that we're also put through a whole lot of transformation, in which comes with a lot of grief, dark night of the soul, and spirit will
Mhm.
come and rearrange everything in your life and turn it all around because and it may not be what you wanted for yourself because your spirit's making you go in that direction because you're with your higher self, right? And so yeah, so we have grief too. We just have to learn to put it in the treasure box so that we can hold space for each other and be of service to our community and to spirit. But we know what that is, so we all have it too,
Yeah.
for sure. So thank you for acknowledging us too, those of us who are doing this work, because we could be going through something of our own, and then we just have to push it aside because people need us, and we come through and we do that. So I'm so happy that you mentioned that. So thank you so much. I do wish we could talk for hours. I hope you'll come back again, and I hope we can
I
work
will.
more in the future because it's just so important, and everybody here is so appreciative of you too, Nadija. So
And the
for
last
your
announcement,
love.
if I may, I'm going to
Okay.
start to hold some free online death cafes starting in July. So it's totally free. Third Wednesday
Wow.
of every month, starting the 17th of July. So I'm going to talk about that on my social media, but I know this is something that people might find interesting. Again, just to be a container. It's not therapy, support group,
Mhm.
online death cafes. We just gather
Okay,
and talk
thank
about
you. Yeah, let's talk more about that. Any way that I can help support you with that and share it out, I would love to. So thank you for that too.
Thank you
So
very
yeah, because
much.
we're not afraid, we're not afraid of, because people are like, oh, I talked to the dead, and I have to explain. They feel so sad when they go, what? You just did a reading for a group of parents who lost children. Yeah, that was one of the most beautiful parts of my day that I got to do that. It's a blessing to be able to work in this way and help, and make lives better, and it's like it's a blessing what we get to do. So we get a lot back in it. So again, thank you. We love you. You're beautiful.
Thank you. And
You're special.
love to everybody who's still grieving, and love
Yeah.
to all of you. Thank you very much for having me, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank you,
very much
Nadija.
to everybody.
And
Thank you.
everybody, thank you for joining Embracing Infinity. Please stay tuned for Kelly coming on soon. She's going to be doing an interview as well. I can't remember who it is, Kelly, if you could put it in the chat box. But have a little lunch and come back on in about 45 minutes to come see Kelly. That's going to be a beautiful show as well. And keep remembering to follow the love. Let it be your compass. Let it be your guide. It will not steer you wrong. And embrace the love and all of you. Let all of this healing and all of this beautiful work we've done today be multiplied infinitely and spread across this world and beyond so that everybody can feel love. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a
Thank you.
beautiful afternoon and evening, everybody. And thank you again, Nadija. Bye,
Thanks again.
everybody.
Bye bye. Bye bye.